Hello, World Civ 107. We are now in the middle of week 5. We're going to be rolling into week 6, and then we have the final, and we're done. Okay. So, if you have any issues with anything in this class in terms of the grades or comments that I've made, now is the time to try to get in contact with me because we're running out of time. Please make sure that you do that. I will not be taking a bunch of late work last minute from students who are not doing their work. If you've communicated with me and I've already approved of that, you're fine. Okay, but also in terms of communication, I'm about ready to get a tooth pulled, so I may be out of commission just for a little bit or slow to respond. So yeah, hopefully that'll just heal up quick enough. I'll be working from home tomorrow. I just want to quickly mention a few things. This information that we're covering now and that we're going to cover next week is so important to really get a sense of the world stage, to really look at the more complicated aspects of the legacy of the Cold War and anti-communism, as well as communism, and how China has proved to be such a successful state and is now such a world player. And I'm hoping that you noticed that Africa and Asia now are intertwined in having much more of a relationship than we've seen historically. And also paying attention, as being from the United States, as to how strong of a role, a controversial role, might I add, the United States has had with our neighbors to the south. Okay? If you have any questions on any of this, or please feel free to ask me, and I'll respond as soon as possible. Last thing I'm going to say, I do live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm sure many of you have watched the news. And I think we have something very critical here. I don't like to get too politically biased, so I'm going to put this in a sort of nuanced, non-hardline ideological way. Something at least maybe for some rest of you to think about. First of all, the demonstrations have almost exclusively, but not entirely, but mainly have been all just happening downtown. Just downtown Portland. Not all of Portland, okay? So we're talking about a few blocks this whole situation has mainly been occurring. And people in Portland, even if they've sympathized with the demonstration's message, have had mixed feelings about some of the actions of some of the demonstrations. It's true when it comes to the treatment of private property or government property, for that matter, and so forth. But the idea, I mean, we're having this virus that is taking place, and according to even now the admission of our own president, is accelerating. And there's been no federal response. It's been the states being allowed to pretty much do what they're going to do. But now we have a federal response to this set of demonstrations happening downtown in Portland. And not just defending the buildings, which I think that is a clear-cut legally, that's their mandate to defend the buildings, but coming in unmarked vehicles and making people disappear off the street. This is antithetical to not just one particular type of political ideology. And that's why the demonstrations now are growing in support, and it's doing the opposite effect. And many people are questioning what the broader implications to where things are going politically. I think it is critical, and I think that it's, to be blunt, an abuse of power. And I just want to remind you of this. Think about everything we've been learning. Chaos and a crisis is always where authoritarianism takes root. So it's almost irrelevant to me just what to make of what the protesters have been doing or not. You never want a situation to give rise to putting a sort of justification for government power that shouldn't be used in that case. And I think sometimes people forget that we need to look at the broader implications about what a precedent means and what gets set for a country. And you know, I when I traveled over last year, I was gone for a year. I only lived in what would be considered a free countries for a total of 3 months. For over a year, I lived in countries that were not free according to the standards of most people. And what I mean by free is that you didn't have freedom of speech. You don't have the right to demonstrate. And you do disappear from any kind of government agent that they want. I left Hong Kong on September 5th, okay, in the middle of the time of those demonstrations. I was going back and forth to Thailand when there was the election where Prayut just took power under a sort of fake pretext, and it is what is there. I was in Cambodia. Hun Sen has been in office for about 30 years in power, and can't even get the garbage properly cleaned up. And Siem Reap, where there's tons of tourism. And you know, I can go on and on and on. When I went on this travels, what I said to myself is that I want to take what we can value for granted. So what I'm not actually trying to ask anybody to necessarily change to a particular type of ism. I want you to ask where your ism would actually fit into what you're seeing now under the precedents that are being set. Okay, that's the important part to think about. And if I'm being alarmist in other people, I will be happy to find out that I was just being alarmist and misguided. I have no problem with that discovery, should it happen. Have a great rest of your week, and I hope all of you do well, and we'll be in touch.